Today we're going to show you how to change the air diffuser on your refrigerator, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a 1/4" nut driver, a Phillips screwdriver, and maybe a small flat blade screwdriver. Let me show you how we do it. Now, before we begin this repair, since we will be working near some electrical circuits, we'll want to turn the power off to the refrigerator. So either locate the circuit breaker or fuse and disconnect the power there, or pull it out far enough to remove the plug. Our next step will be to open the refrigerator door, and it's best if we remove all of the items on the upper shelf, and maybe remove that upper shelf or set it down a little bit lower so that we can access the components along the left-hand wall here. Now, our first step is going to be to remove the ice maker so that we can remove the air duct assembly to get at the back where the diffuser comes through. Remove anything that may be on this upper shelf, and maybe even just set that shelf out of the way. And next, we'll want to open the door to the ice maker. So close the little flipper, raise the access door to the ice maker, and then we're just going to very carefully pull that hinge away and undo the pins on both sides. And then we'll take that door completely out and set it aside. Now next, we're going to remove a 1/4" hex head screw that secures a shield at the back of that ice maker to the bottom of the ice maker. We need to remove that. Well, next we'll release the locking tabs that hold that ice maker into the little rails on the side. So with a flat blade screwdriver, we're just going to reach up in there and just raise that tab enough and pull forward on the ice maker enough to release the tabs. And then just slide it forward while holding that flipper closed. Once you get it far enough forward, you'll be able to reach in behind and roll that cover off that fits over top of the harness connector and set that aside. And continue to pull it forward. And at the very top there is a fill tube that will go into that fill cup, and we'll have to pull it hard enough to fold that fill tube over enough that we can pull it all the way out. Now with the flat blade screwdriver, we're just going to reach in and release that locking tab and disconnect the harness and set the ice maker aside. And we need to remove this air duct. It's held to the ceiling with 2 1/4" hex head screws. And then just lift up on the very back of it while tilting it forward, and then we can remove it. You'll note that there are 2 little hooks that will fit over this back cover to hold it in place. We'll set that aside. Now next we have an air inlet duct that goes into that diffuser. It's just a friction fit, so just grasp it and pull it away from it, and then pull it up and out of the back. Now our next step will be to go to the fresh food section so that we can disconnect that air diffuser, and then we'll have to come back into the freezer to release these little locking tabs. So now we'll go to the fresh food section. First, then we'll remove anything on the upper shelf, and we'll also take that shelf off. Set it down out of the way. Now our next step will be to remove this cover. There's a wire harness beneath that, so we'll take the single Phillips screw out of it. And then we'll also expose another Phillips screw that holds the air diffuser cover. So remove that. And just pull that cover away. There's a little tab at the very end that goes into the back wall. Next, we're going to disconnect a little 2-wire harness on the bottom of that air diffuser. And the wiring is held in place with some tape, so we'll remove the tape first. Then we'll release the locking tab on that wire harness connector and unplug it. Now there's also some tape across the main wire harness. I'm going to detach that. And now we can pull that whole air diffuser assembly away from the wall, but at the same time we're going to have to reach into the freezer and depress the tabs that hold it in place. So just reach in and push all 4 of these tabs towards the center while gently pulling away with the next we're just going to push these 4 tabs towards the center of that opening while gently pulling on that air diffuser from the refrigerator side. And that will release it and allow us to pull it all the way through. You'll also note that there's one more piece of tape across the bottom of that that holds the rest of that harness. So with a flat blade, just get underneath that tape. And release that wire harness. That will allow us to pull the whole assembly forward. Next we'll release the main wire harness connector, so lift up on the locking tab and then pull that connector away. Now you may be able to reuse this tape. If not, get a good quality masking tape and attach it to the new diffuser in the same areas that this one is. And we'll hang on to that old diffuser because we'll want to position some tape on the new one in the same manner that is on the original. We'll put some new tape on the new diffuser. And now we can begin to reassemble. So our first thing will be to lay the 2-wire harness to the sensor that goes in through that opening into the freezer, and we'll lay that through this channel here so that it can connect to the 2-wire connector from the main harness. So first step will be to take that harness, lay it through that channel in the styrofoam, and then secure it with tape, and then we can push the whole assembly through the opening until it locks in place on the freezer side. Now with the harness taped in place, we're next going to push that firmly into position and make sure that the 4 tabs lock on the freezer side. Just verify that they do. Do a dry fit with the air duct to make sure that it will fit into that opening. Now with the air diffuser completely locked into place, we're next going to run that little sensor harness up and across through a little channel on the foam, and we'll connect it to the other half of that harness. So we'll lock those connectors in first. Make sure the locking tab engages. Lay that harness up in the channel, and then we'll pull that tape down over it to hold it in place. We'll also push the rest of that harness up and over top of the motor and pull that piece of tape down to keep it in place. Well, next we can install the harness connector to the motor. Make sure we have it fully inserted so that the locking tab engages. And we can also reinsert that little rubber plug into one of the openings on the top so that nobody inadvertently puts that harness into the wrong position. Next, we're going to position that little tab into the slot in the back wall. Tuck the harness up into the cover, and then we can reinstall the single screw. And then the harness cover, and then the cover for the wire harness. and just hold it up tight to the ceiling as you tighten the screw. We can now reinstall that shelf and close up the refrigerator side. And now we'll put the freezer back together. Okay, next we'll put the air deflector into position. Just slide it down in behind the rear cover, line it up with the diffuser opening, push it in until it's flush. Next we'll put the air duct to the ceiling, and again we want to make sure that we engage these two tabs along the top edge of that back panel, and then secure it with 1/4-inch hex head screws. Next we'll reinstall the ice maker. So we'll first of all reconnect the wire harness. Make sure the locking tab engages. Then we'll pull that far enough forward that we can slide these two tracks into the rails on the side. Make sure that we keep the wire harness up above that right-hand rail. Now we'll have to clear that water inlet tube at the top, so you may want to reach in from behind as we're pushing that ice maker back and just push that fill tube forward and allow the ice maker fill cup to go in underneath it. And push it back until it locks in place. And next we're going to reinstall the cover for the harness. Keep the opening for the screw hole down and towards the center. So just reach in, flip it up over the back, and then pull the bottom tab down into position. So the top half goes over top of the wire harness, and the bottom will line up with that screw hole. So install that 1/4-inch hex head screw to hold it in place. Next we'll put the cover back in position. So holding it flat, we're just going to push it in past the hinges and just gently spread those hinges out enough to allow the pins to drop into position. Ensure that the ice maker is turned on. We'll reposition the shelf. We're now ready to reconnect the power, and our repair is complete.